All right, guys. We are coming in live, guys, right now with another week of In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. This week, we're really excited to talk to Sara Williams, the founder of Hemp for Healthcare in America and Hemp for Healthcare in Alaska. This is going to be a great show. We're going to talk a lot about hemp, I imagine, right? But before we get to that, Sara, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I see what you're doing. I see your social media. I reached out. We're really excited to have you on. Now, a lot of people don't know who you are. So let's say hi to everybody. Introduce yourself. And like we were discussing before the show, one of the biggest things that we like to discuss on the show is how you get into the world of cannabis, correct?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, hi, guys. My name is Sara Williams. I live here in Wasilla, Alaska. And I got into the world of cannabis because I want to say the date was July 2nd, 2012. I had my first cannabis experience at 32 years old. Okay. I wasn't one of those kids that like smoked weed as a kid. Like it just, no, like I had zero connection to cannabis. I had my first cookie and I was like, this is horrible because it was a 100 milligram cookie, right? The reasons why we have controlled markets is so you don't have your first experience with a cannabis product being a horribly overdosed edible. And so the next experience was 2 years later, and I smoked it for the first time, and I was like, whoa, this is medicine. This is medicine for what I need. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Springfield, Oregon. I went to Thurston High School. I graduated in 1998, and that is the year of the high school shooting. So at 17 years old, a 15-year-old boy walked into my cafeteria and just shot up the entire cafeteria. So of the 17 people sitting at my cafeteria table that morning, 2 of us walked away without a bullet. So you can imagine there was a little bit of PTSD, a little bit of depression and anxiety, but on top of that, I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic and abusive in all areas possible. So just adding the trauma element of that, I struggled with depression and anxiety all of my life. And pharmaceuticals did nothing but numb me out and make me feel just dead inside. And so when I found cannabis, I was in love. Like I was in love from the first puff. And so I felt like, oh my gosh, I can really use this to really like dial in as medicine because, you know, as an edible, my goodness, you take too much and you're all over the place. But as a, you know, consuming it, smoking it, you can really control it and microdose in that way. And so that was October of 2014. In November of 2014, Alaska went legal. On November 4th of 2014, we went legal for recreational. And I was like, all right, so my husband at the time has a passion for the plant. I have a master's degree in business administration and bachelor's degree in political science. I was like, okay, let's do this. Like, we don't have a dime to our names, but I know that I can be attractive enough to get the investor and make this happen. So we had this really big idea of seed to sale, right? We're gonna do it all. But at the time, we couldn't really sell except in the black market at that time still. So we got involved with educating people and doing classes because I'm an instructor. I'm a certified post-secondary instructor. So we started doing classes and realizing getting people ready for the legal market. And then, you know, I found my investor and we dialed it back just to a retail store. And then through a series of events, my investor just pulled his money one day when I was sitting in a marijuana control board meeting. And through that journey, though, I had been heavily involved in setting up the public regulations. Some of our regulations are actually my words, which is awesome. I became chair of our marijuana advisory committee for the MatSu borough here, or the Matanuska-Susitna borough here in Alaska. So if you don't know anything about Alaska, we are a state that is 2.5 times the size of Texas in landmass. Okay, we're huge, but we have 730,000 people in our entire state. We have a lot of land and a little amount of people. And well, anyway, so I became really heavily involved there. And then when my investor pulled the money, I was like, oh, what do I do? Right? Well, what do I do now? And so just shortly thereafter, a friend came to me and said, hey, we want to open a retail store. Will you write our application for us? I was like, absolutely. I'm an excellent wordsmith. I've already written an application a number of times for this previous attempted run. Let's do this. So to date now, I have written 7 successful applications, 5 and gotten licensed for 5 limited cultivations, 2 retail, and we're working on the 3rd retail now. So I've just really been heavily involved in, I love cannabis, but as I was telling Joseph, I am 16 months sober as of today. I've not consumed any cannabis. I had a 5-year deep dependency upon the plant. We can talk about what it does to me in a later date, but I really became somebody that I needed it. And with that, it destroyed so much of my life because I wasn't managing it properly. And so on the other side of this, though, when I came to awaken spiritually, I came to know the Lord. And if you followed my page for any more than maybe an hour, you've noticed that I love God. I love Jesus, and I'm willing to put that all out there for the whole world to see. And so he rescued me from a world of prostitution, a world of pornography, a world of adultery, a world of homelessness and brokenness and chronic mental and physical illness and all of that. And I'm not there anymore, and praise God. But in that process, he gave me this phenomenal idea of hemp for healthcare. Okay, because Alaska is dependent on oil and tourism. Thank you, COVID-19, for destroying our economy. Right? What do we do now? So hemp really gives the potential for Alaska to grow everything she needs out of hemp, right? Everything. Total self-sustainability. We can do plastics, we can do food, we can do building materials, we can do medicine, right? We can do all of this stuff out of this powerful plant that the Lord gave us. And so then what we do is we tax it at a reasonable rate, and we sell it on hempforhealthcare.com, and we take the profits from that site and we put that into a healthcare fund to pay for healthcare for all Alaskan residents. So this whole journey started as hemp for healthcare in Alaska, but I knew that it was going to be America one day. And so through the process, I spoke with a man, and he said, well, why don't we upgrade it now? So I sent the logo back to my graphic designer, and he came up with the upgraded version. And so the idea is that you guys are in Vermont, you would come to hempforhealthcare.com and you would purchase hemp products on hempforhealthcare.com, and the profits from your purchase would go back into your state's healthcare fund. So you're crowdfunding your healthcare. We're not forcing taxation on anyone, but instead we're supporting the hemp industry and we're crowdfunding our healthcare. So that's kind of the roundabout way to how we got to hemp for healthcare. But the 2 last pieces is the industrial hemp for prisons program and the hemp houses for the homeless. And so teaching our prisoners to grow hemp for food or textiles or building materials, and then process it and sell it out to our governments of those states, so we keep the money within the states. And then hemp houses for the homeless are just that. Houses built out of hempcrete with hemp wood, hemp carpet, hemp paint, hemp mattresses, and place individuals who have no income or low income into a place with a focus on recovery. Because I personally know how hard it is to be homeless and to really focus on your recovery when you're more worried about where you're going to sleep and what you're going to eat. Mm-hmm. So that's the big picture. My goal is to save America, and I know hemp can do it. So that's where we're at.
Oh my God, so many questions. I was just like, question. Oh my God, question.
I know, I should have shot it.
Oh,
Bring the
What an
no.
incredible story.
We
Like,
got
wow,
time.
like what a pass. That's just amazing. You know,
Well, that's it.
it's got everything.
glory. Okay, glory. That's it. Like he gets glory for it. It's his idea. I do pick up my cross though every day and get out there and fight for it. And if I have to sit down with, you know, Donald Trump or Joe Biden or the whole stand in front of the whole UN and be like, y'all need to wake up, hemp is where it's at, then I don't have a problem. I've prepared myself mentally to do that. So I'm so grateful for you giving me the chance to just present this idea and get it out there, because without the help, you know, I need investors, I need supporters, I need sponsors, I need all of that. And so what are your questions? Bring them.
Well, I mean, hey, like Tim said, like, I mean, obviously one of our big things on our show is people's histories, you know, how they get into cannabis. I mean, obviously, the story that you just gave us is kind of eye-opening and mind-blowing for some people, right? And, you know, the beauty of it is that you're here again, right? Now, like you said, like you found a path, you know, and that, you know, not everybody has a perfect past, right? Not everybody, you know, and we hate to have people's pasts affect their futures in a way if you're trying to do something positive, right?
Right. Right.
It's amazing to see that you saw and utilized pretty much cannabis at an earlier age, where not a lot of people at that time, I guess, you know, if we look at the way things are, we're really looking at cannabis for that kind of a usage, right? You know, people are still getting high. It wasn't really in our medical system. I mean, you're talking quite a few years ago now, right? And then,
but yeah, I guess 6. Yeah.
So, I mean, in some parts of the country, people are not thinking of it as that, you know, you utilize it for that. And obviously it worked for you, right? So that's the first question I have for you is like, you know, obviously coming from where you were at that point in your life, looking at cannabis and you utilizing it for that, how did it affect you? I mean, I think a lot of people sit here that listen to the show and say, hey, I'm in this situation, you know, does it work? You know what I mean? Because you have other alternatives like opioids. You know, you have all these other that we talk about consistently in our cannabis industry that have a huge effect on people, and let alone you know, just like you said, the path that you took to get to where you were at that point. I mean, just alone, that must be.
So let's break this down into the 3 areas: the mental and the physical and the spiritual. Okay, so cannabis helped me mentally. See, so I struggled with now I approach things a lot differently now because I understand spiritual warfare and I understand demons and I live and operate of Christ and Satan. Okay. But in the past, I just had all these thoughts where I wasn't good enough. I was a piece of, you know, I've heard y'all cuss on here, but a piece of shit, right? Those were words that, you know, speak in my mind. I was unworthy. I wasn't enough. Nobody loved me. Okay, all of these things that would hit me, right? And I didn't have any barriers or any way to deal with them except weed, praise God. So whenever I would start to get into those spaces, I would get hot, okay? And so what that meant for me was that I could just all of a sudden get present and I could get like open and I could accept myself and love myself. And I became like, I would call it canna courage, you know, where I would just be able to just be free. Now with that though, that came a lot of sexual freedom too. A lot of where I was like, oh, you know, let me just share my whole body with the world because that's going to somehow make me feel validated, but it didn't. But that was where I was at mentally at that time. And so mentally, if it had not been for cannabis in the 5 years that I used the plant, if it had not been for that, I would have killed myself because I was, for 2.5 years of my life, I was suicidal. I had serious shame and serious guilt for how I had acted and what I had done. And I was suicidal. So whenever I was suicidal, I'd get high. And then I'd get like, I would meditate and I would what we call yoga-tate. I started recording it, putting it on YouTube because I was like, I don't understand what's going on in my body. But I would go to these doctors and I would be like, please watch me consume cannabis. You need to understand what happens. And they'd be like, oh, well, we can't do that because we're going to lose our federal license. Right. And so all the while, I just wanted to get fixed of the pain that was inside my body physically. And yet they, you know, were just passing me on down the road because they were too scared to lose their license. So, so mentally, it kept me in a place of uplifted, you know, an ability to like just take on life. You know, it made me able to to play with my son better, because I could just kind of ignore the world around me and just get a little more imaginative, a little more creative with my child. And so those were places. But some of the places that wasn't good for me was that it would cause me to have kind of these hills and valleys. And so I would have these bipolar kind of just depressive moments, and I just have to have more cannabis to kind of bring me back up, right? And so that was kind of the mental effects. Physically, but I think also mentally, it also helped me greatly to decalcify my pineal gland. Okay, y'all have that third eye, right? It helped build my spiritual connection, but that we'll get to that. So physically, I didn't know what was going on in my body until this day. I still have no total understanding, except that it had something to do with my uterus and my ovaries. Okay, I don't know, but something was happening all over my body that was causing massive pain and massive swelling and horrible pain. Just and I would try to explain it to doctors, but you have to understand, you can agree that you're only as good at communicating to a doctor your symptoms and articulating your symptoms as educated as you are. If you don't know anything about the human body, if you've never taken anatomy or physiology class, how can you communicate? You'll be like, I'm in pain, fix me, I'm in pain, right? They're like, well, where and what? And so it becomes this game of pinning the tail on the donkey, when you could be having headaches, but yet we'll get into that in a second. But so physically, when I would consume cannabis, the anti-inflammatory properties of cannabis were just my godsend, because it took the pain away. I could live life, I could survive, I could keep going, right? And so it reduced all of that inflammation. It took away all of that pain, which was amazing. And then finally, spiritually, I am a visionary. I am a visionary, but I'm not a visionary alone. Cannabis helped me to awaken that pineal gland, awaken my spiritual connection, and hear the calling and purpose on my life. And so, but I had to do it through the process of meditation. And I also had to do it through the process of pulling out all of my junk and dealing with all of my past, and then moving forward. And so being able to hear the voice of God and hear his calling and hear all of that, cannabis, on September 22nd, 2018, in probably one of the most highest I've ever been moments in my life, was when the hemp for healthcare idea came. So praise God, right? So cannabis really has, that benefit of yes, building that spiritual connection, of also that physical and that mental, but it can be, if you exalt it and you don't actually do the self-work and you try to just get high all the time, then it's going to cause a problem, right? It's going to cause just an addiction and a dependency that one day will fall apart. And so instead, do the self-work at the same time, and then you won't build up all that and have a great hot mess fall like I did.
Right. Now, when you were consuming, a lot of people are talking about consumption and the effects. Were you smoking it? Were you doing oil? How are you doing?
Everything.
Right?
There were days when I would get out of the shower and I would slather myself from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet with coconut oil, infused coconut oil. There were days when I would smoke it. There were days when I would dab it. One of my favorite testimonies is that I was walking around the house after my car accident in 2016. I had disc herniated my C5, C6, T1, T2 upper thoracic area. And I was beginning to use cannabis as my pain management, because I refused to use pharmaceuticals and refused to use opioids. So I'm walking around the house and I'm just so depressed because I can't clean like I used to, and I can't be the mom like I used to. And the pain was just so intense all the time. And my husband tells me, go hit the nail. Right? So I go in the back room, I hit the nail, I give maybe 5-10 minutes of like refocusing, stretching out my neck, letting the inflammation, and I come back out and I'm smiling and I'm laughing and I'm like, all right. And I felt so bipolar, so incredibly bipolar, but yet the plant helped rebalance me. And so there's, it's all in how you use it, right? It doesn't matter if it's coffee, or it doesn't matter if it's a relationship. It's all in how you utilize it. And cannabis definitely has been just powerful medicine for me.
Now, I mean, it's great to hear a success story like that, especially surrounding cannabis, and that you didn't choose another option like an opioid path or other paths that some people can choose, alcoholism, something like that. And now it's the second most interesting part about even that whole story is that now you're not smoking cannabis. Now this is another issue that people need to discuss a little bit more, and there are effects that people are feeling when they do smoke cannabis, right? It's some people kind of disagree with it. I mean, I've come up with people, especially back in high school, that if they smell it, they'd go get sick. They had issues around whether it was a smoke or the weed or however it was back then. We just laughed at them. It was like, can't handle weed, you know what I mean? But now we see groups of people that do have some issues when they are on cannabis, and again, it's like every medicine, it's not for everybody, right? Like same thing with pharmaceuticals, there's no difference, right? Let's not forget that some pharmaceuticals work vastly different for other people. Now the journey is amazing, the fact that you utilize cannabis the way you did, and and you're very observant of how you utilized it and how it worked for you. But now, like you were saying, now you're 16 months free. Now at that point in time, you felt great, it was helping you out, it helped you get you through that part of your life. Now you're in this part of your life. How does it feel not to be on it? And what made you, like, I know you brushed on it really quickly, but how do you make that change to wake up one day and say no? And then at this point, 16 months later, how do you still feel about it? Is it something that you'll probably go back to or no?
Well, good question. So let's talk about how I got to in a hot mess on a September night in 2017. I decided I would rather be homeless and sleep in a car than be with my husband who didn't want me anymore. Now, mind you, I didn't really want me either. I was a hot mess. I was selfish, and I was self-centered, and I was narcissistic, and I was a sex addicted, I was bad. And so in that, I walked through 2.5 years of homelessness, of living in a dry cabin. If you've never lived in a world where you don't get a hot shower every day or have running water, like it changes you as a person, but when you're battling demons in your mind, and you cry, every day, and all of these things, I had struggled through those time periods, and it got to the point where I was realizing that the cannabis wasn't going to heal me. It wasn't going to fix me. It wasn't going to cure what was ailing me. It was going to help me survive, but it wasn't going to heal the problem. It wasn't going to fix the problem. And so one day my mom said, I'm calling the MatSu Health Services and you're going to get recovery. And I was like, okay, all right, Mom, because I'm done living like this. My whole body had wasted away. I was like down to 137 pounds. I was just in a hot mess situation. And so I went and got recovery, and I started my Celebrate recovery process. And for the first year of my walk with Christ, though, I got high every night, and I listened to worship music, and I praised, and that was my time, right, with the Lord. Well, then I started going to a church called King's Chapel, Alaska. And shout out to my pastor, Daniel. He is a Pentecostal church, and he is just I'm not going to call, he's not responsible for my sobriety, but he had a big part to play in it by saying the words, "There is no high like the Most High." Because when I began to go to King's Chapel, Alaska, I realized, oh my God, you can feel the presence of God when you walk in that building. You could feel it. And I started to get laid out in the Holy Spirit. And so when people would pray for me, you get slain and you're hit on the floor in the Holy Spirit. So when I deepened my relationship with God to the point that I said, okay, I'm surrendering everything to you. I'm surrendering my life, I'm surrendering my career, I'm surrendering everything. And then I finally surrendered the one thing that I had worshiped for 5 years, which was the cannabis plant. And I surrendered that. The first 2 days, yeah, that kind of sucked. But after that, that every time there was any type of craving or desire or whatever, I just went after God, and I went after the word, and I went after deepening my relationship with the Lord. Okay. So as I did that, he healed all the places that were broken. And I began to go through recovery, and I began to get more counseling, and I began to go to, these kinds of situations and pull these things out and go, look, God's my healer. The plant is something, yes, he provided to us, absolutely. But right now, I've reached a point spiritually that I didn't need it any longer. So I don't judge anyone who is using it because they feel they need it. But for me, my relationship with the Lord is that he's my healer, and I don't need it any longer. And so I take it, they do their thing. That's and so somebody just, I think the other day on my one of my Facebook posts was like, how can you support cannabis and love God? And I was like, well, hold on. God created it. Like, hold on. We have to realize that I'm not in your spiritual walk. You're not in mine. I can't apply my spiritual path to you. Like, that's just not acceptable. And so by the power of the Lord in my life, have I been able to break off this addiction. But it wasn't just cannabis. I've become vegan. I cut off my sugar addiction. I have been I've totally transformed my entire health and my life to clean up my mind and clean up my physical. And so 16 months later, I'm a wholly different person. I'm not self-centered any longer. I'm not narcissistic. I care about people. I give. I'm a tither. I'm a wholly different person than I once was. But only by the glory of God is that possible. So, if people are looking to, to quit, if people are like, I've done this for so long, I know this is not the answer for me, then I am always the first person to say, call on Jesus, because he saved me and he healed me. And so, but I always like to say I found him in a parking lot because a friend of mine prayed for me. And that was the day that I was like, okay, it's not working. Worshiping Satan and practicing witchcraft and playing around with all this darkness is not working to build joy in me and satisfaction. I can't even talk right now. But, so that was my journey. And so that's why I minister so much for the Lord, because he's taken me out of homelessness. He's restored relationships in my family. He's brought about healing in my life. In my body, in my mind. I don't have depression or anxiety anymore. I combat it differently now. I don't turn to a substance. I turn to scripture, and I turn to just speaking out the opposite of whatever lies the enemy is telling me. So there's, I just have a different way of battling things. Now, would I ever go back? The truth is I've always considered, because of what cannabis does to me with the whole yogitation process, we didn't get much into that. But there was a popping that would happen in my neck. I'd smoke, right? And then instantly my neck would start to pop and I would taste spinal fluid. Okay. Cause my neck injury. And I would realign my spine and all my bones would start to, it was a strange, weird, I didn't get it. I recorded it because I was like, maybe someday somebody will come upon it and see it and they'll want to help me. I don't know. And so so hold on one moment. My friend, my son, you said, go. Thank you. All right. Sorry, guys. So all these weird things would happen, and I'd go to these doctors and I'd say, please tell me what happens to my body when I consume cannabis. And they'd be like, well, we don't know. We're like, so if I were to ever consume it again, I would like it to be under a very controlled medical situation, so that there's a doctor there who understands the endocannabinoid system, can really understand what I'm consuming and how the different cannabinoids within that is affecting my system. And that's what we need to do, because the only way we can truly affect cannabis as medicine is if we reverse engineer your endocannabinoid system, right? Your endocannabinoid needs are different than mine, right? And the only way to truly know is to test all your cannabinoids, determine what your deficiencies are, and then develop specific medicines that will fill in all your deficiencies. Then you're in a space of homeostasis, right? So that's what we need to do to truly make the cannabis the medicine that it deserves. And man can do that. We've got the brain. The Lord will give us the knowledge. That's there. We'll find it. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. Israel's close. And so yeah. So I will maybe, I've actually, to be honest, I'm going to be honest with it. I've really been curious about DMT, but only for spiritual awakening, right? And like, I'm not interested in consuming things just to get intoxicated or escape my problems anymore, because I've changed my healing methods. But now I'm more like for the spiritual connections kind of things, than I am.
Ayahuasca. I mean, it's used in Southern American, religious ceremonies.
Yeah.
That's the base of ayahuasca. And people will say it's a spiritual experience. It's not a fucked up experience. It's a finding yourself. I'm actually kind of really curious myself, to be honest. It's one of those things I've always.
But it's also something that I don't want to do unless I'm like, I have a medical professional kind of around me, or like, I know that I recently spoke with Annie Epsley, I think is her name, and Erica Halverson. They're talking about doing these wellness retreats that can allow you to be kind of in a safe environment to try those kinds of things. And so I'm really, I'm a big fan of the decriminalization of all substances worldwide. That's just my, I don't believe that you can ever control desires of the flesh with legalism. You control it with a spiritual relationship, and that's that. So yeah, I'm curious.
No, that's amazing. I was actually going to ask you about how you felt about the decriminalization of, pretty much all drugs, like we've seen in Oregon, and then DC's working on that same measure, right? So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, obviously, you've come through a lot, right? I mean, it's amazing to hear your story again, because I mean, I'm sure it's a past that, unfortunately, it's something that, congratulations to you, actually, what I mean, for realizing where you were at that point in time, and striving to get a way out, because it's hard, I think, to get the things that you were discussing, what I mean, and have a lot of those things and compounding and then happening at once in your life. It's very difficult to stay and stand up again and keep that fight going. A lot of people take a quick way out, what I mean.
And if I could say anything to that right now, is don't give up. Don't let the devil lie to you. Don't give up. Never give up. It doesn't matter if what you're going through right now feels like it's the end of the world and nothing can change it. God will change it. Like, just never give up, because then the devil wins, and don't let that happen, like, ever.
Right. I mean, here we are sitting still in a lockdown in COVID, where people are still losing their minds. What I mean? They don't know what to do. Like, the stress is mounting for a lot of people right now. And what are they doing? Right now, the biggest thing we see is a lot of people turning to cannabis, which is great. What I mean? We're seeing alcohol numbers go down, which is another amazing thing. You mentioned alcoholism growing up in your life, which is something that, that has an immediate effect. We talk about, the differences with growing up with, stoner parents or alcoholic parents, and what, just that alone, that one thing alone, the influence it can have on a child, right? And in their journey, so, and whatever gets you on these journeys. But it's amazing that you can find a recovery for it. It's amazing that, cannabis, again, there's a lot of people that are still naysayers, right? What I mean? They still don't believe in it. They don't see the science. But here, we bring a lot of patients on so they can share their stories with us, whether it's easy for them or not. I'm sure you have a past you'd like to get away from, but like, you look at it straightforward. You're definitely open and honest about it, and it's inspiring.
Your past happened for a perfect reason to make you into the person that you are today. Even the bad, even the struggle, even the storm, even the disgusting, even the dirty and the ugly, all happened to build your strength, to build your perseverance, and to build your character. Because at the end, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter the big size of your house or the size of your car. It doesn't matter. What it matters is your character and your integrity, because that's what matters. That's what carries on in your soul into our next level, right? So this life is temporary, and the Lord and my relationship with him is what really allowed me to say that shame that I was feeling, that I needed to build the resiliency to that I've been forgiven, that I've been made new, that I can move forward, that I'm not that person any longer. But yet through that process, I had to make amends. I had to pull out, like, where have I hurt people, and how have I done it? And then go and say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I was a bad person, and let my pride out the window, be humble. I'm putting myself out there for the whole world, right? Like the whole world. And within 3 weeks, meat marbles. Within 3 weeks, my profile has gone from like brand new because Facebook has banned me 9 times in this journey. So I am back on and I'm just like walking on eggshells, like, please keep me here. And so in the past 3 weeks, I've gone to 5,000 friends and I'm taking, the growth is amazing and I'm so grateful for it. But the truth is persecution is going to come. And when I run for office, you know what they're going to do? They're going to bring up, oh, she was a prostitute. Oh, she was a porn star. Oh, she was a horrible person. She did horrible things. Yeah, I was. And glory be to God that I got healed from that. And so should you. So I just don't, I can handle persecution in a wholly different way now than I could a long time ago. And I've really prepared myself for this mission. I am Illuminati. So my mission is global as much as it is to save America and to save my own state here in Alaska. We can't have a global government if we have weak children within that government. So if you look at our founding fathers, when they founded the United States of America, I can guarantee you they didn't say, gosh, we really hope that all of these states will suck off the federal government for the rest of their lives. Pretty sure they didn't think that way. Pretty sure maybe they thought we're going to build them and one day they're going to be so strong they could stand on their own. So in any way, America is more like the federated states of America than we are united. Okay, we're not united. Let's just truth be told, we're not united, right? I mean, we're 50-50. Who's president? We don't know. We're so divided. It's ridiculous. And so we, we have this issue that you can't have a successful future for America until you recognize that a healthcare for all system has to be state centralized. States have to take care of their own populations. The states have to look within and take care of their own problems. They can't be trying to fix it at a federal level with these expansive policies that don't work. Now, we need 38 votes for a constitutional amendment to the United States Constitution. We have 43, is that our number? States that have some sort of recreational or medical cannabis industry. When will the feds wake up? Let's hope it's this year. Come on, guys. Just get stop. Just decriminalize and let the states do their own thing. That's fine. But just decriminalize, for heaven's sake. So
that's what me and Tim preach this every week. It's the strategy, how to move forward, and the best way to do it, right? Like you said, decriminalization. Tim, he comes on a lot and reminds us what decriminalization means versus, just making it legal, right? Because we can still go to jail. There's still repercussions that can come from it. If we can get it off of the schedule, if we can deschedule this, right? Then all that stuff just goes away. It just becomes an agricultural product or whatever we can, whatever industry can fall in at that point. How do you feel about this? I mean, let's talk a little bit about where we're at right now. We have a few minutes before we get Tim involved with some of our news and stuff this week, which again, it's been an insane week. Last week we had all of our states going legal. We had all these new people in public power, and we're still seeing some struggles here and there. We have a Mitch McConnell who stayed in our office, which is amazing to me. I just do not know what they're smoking in his state. The discussion, right? Because I mean, obviously, if you follow the cannabis industry, our biggest obstacle, really, because we do have bipartisanship, right? Like we were saying, right? We have new Gallup polls coming out with, what is it, 68%, 69% of the country in full support of cannabis, right? So we're seeing the support. We saw it with this election, thank God, right? I mean, whoever is the president right now looks like it's Biden, right? Because we don't know what the process is still going to be going through this. But the one thing I'm going to take away from this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, is this is one of the most voted on elections ever. By a landslide.
Both candidates got more votes than any other president ever. Last record was Barack Obama, 69 million. Donald Trump got between 71 and 72 million, and Joe Biden got about 74 million. If anything, if there's any silver lining to this whole thing, it's to see voter participation, see people getting out there. But to me, the biggest thing about election day was weed won.
That's right. And that's because the endocannabinoid system has no political party, right? Your endocannabinoid system is human. Okay, and I actually have a party that I want to put together. It's called the Human Party. If you bleed red, you can be a part of my party. But honestly, decriminalization. Look at every other civilized country out there, and realize that we've got to wake up to this fact that a substance doesn't that you can't. Addicts are not criminals. Okay, addicts are not criminals. They're not. They're broken human beings are seeking something to try to fill their void. Okay. So I get it. They need some sort of assistance. Let's give them a better option. And that's a plant. So these healthcare facilities that come from the healthcare for all concept will be plant-based medicine first. Okay. With pharmaceuticals last, if at all. So where we're headed is that you can't stop the train or the momentum of cannabis or industrial hemp, right? So I posted something recently that was like, look, I don't care who's president, industrial hemp and the Hemp for Healthcare in America mission doesn't change. It still pushes forward because hemp is hope for America's future, right? Cannabis is hope for people's lives to be able to get them healed and get them moving forward. It's honestly not, it's not a president. Okay, it doesn't matter if Joe Biden gets in there or Trump gets in there. Nothing's going to change what's coming or my absolute motivated everyday passion to see industrial hemp save America.
No, I love that you're talking about industrial hemp. We talk about it a lot. It's going to be a tough one, I think, back and forth if we can sustain it, how our agriculture takes to it. It's something that I love for many facts, papers, plastics, cars, and we were seeing it in BMWs. We talked about this a lot. We've seen cars and airplanes and everything made from it. We've seen flooring from it, 2x4s, right? Like you said, you talked about hemp houses earlier, which is another great subject I'd love to talk about, is the hemp houses. You know what I mean? Is it something that's sustainable? Is it something that's affordable? Is it something that we can make in our country that is going to be something that we can sustain? Because I mean, we talk about this a lot. It was, when it went and they made it illegal, right? That time of our era in the 1930s, you know what I mean? We had an industry. We've had historians on where we talked about that history being a hardly sustainable history in our country, right? I'm all for it. I want to see some industrial hemp. I want to see boards. I want to see feeds. I want to be able to see all these products be utilized, but I don't want it to be a third of the cost of a tree, right? Or something like that, which I don't think, in all honesty, I think that within technology and a government that's going to allow us to do research and start doing these projects, we can make it cheap again, right? We can make it as much as that 2x4, but sadly the thing is that people need it.
Sorry, I have to interrupt. So this is my perfect plug for hempforhealthcare.com. Okay, so please, if everything I've said has inspired you to help me move forward with this, I need you to go to hempforhealthcare.com. Yes. I need you to buy hemp. Hashtag buy hemp. Right?
Yes. No, and I totally agree, and we talk about that, but like the sad part right now is a lot of what we find that's available for hemp, and hopefully yours is different, is the fact that they're coming out of other countries, right?
Right. So most of my products, all but one of my products, are made in the USA.
Which is
that's my mission.
Remarkable, right? And they're made here, people. We can get stuff. We have some amazing things. We've had people on that make ukuleles. You get people on that make all sorts
of. I have a hempwood pen. I have hemp straws, right? Hemp biodegradable plastic straws. I have hemp towels and hemp mattresses that are all made here with USA sourced hemp, building and focusing on hemp here in the USA. That's the goal. Plus also, I got to give this plug, not plastic bags. Have you heard about not plastic bags yet? Not plastic bags are biodegradable and compostable plastic bags, but they're made out of plants, and they biodegrade within 6 months time with or without any oxygen. Okay. And please go to hempforhealthcare.com and please buy them so that we can stop this plastic pollution problem. Hempplastic.com, another option. I'm going to be putting hemp utensils on the site soon. Just so many things that are made right here in the United States of America. And we've got to start saying, okay, look, I don't care if it costs a little bit less and, or it costs a little bit more, but it comes from the US. And if we don't look inward, if we don't support our state and our infrastructure and our people, we will fail, and China will own us more than they already do.
Yeah. Well, what scares me is some of the news that I found today, and this is maybe a quick segue to bring Tim involved with this right now. We'll get him going. Was I'm trying to find the article right now. Was that the I believe it was the USDA. Yeah, the USDA had allocated $200,000 to basically to help launch the programs in other countries for hemp. You know what I mean? Which surprised me a little bit because I'm going, why would we be spending 200 grand there to help launch initiatives in you know, especially focus on Asian markets, right? Where you know, that's a market that we're trying to compete with as an American country, right? In the industry, right? And they're trying to set up exportation for our businesses, which I'm going, well, if we to have exportation of our businesses, we need to have our country supporting our businesses, which I don't think is really all there right now, especially with the guidelines and, you know, the bills, the way they're written. And like, you know, we could talk to Tim all day long about those confusions on what's holding a lot of these companies back from really going after being, you know, a competitive industry globally, you know what I mean? And that's going to be the next market, is like you said, you know, we're looking at China and bringing in, you know, we're looking for American made products here right now, especially for your initiative, right? Which is great. There's a lot of awesome products and everything from, like you said, straws, like, you know, here's another initiative that why are we not using hemp more viable in a straw, you know, instead of paper, you know, when we're going to start utilizing hemp more for at least paper products where we can, you know, take what is acreage of trees and grow hemp in, and how many times over to make, you know, X amount more product through just hemp alone, right? Industrial hemp. So
Get your hemp business cards at tinyepaper.com.
Right, exactly. I mean, business
Right.
cards, everything you can make. It might cost you a little bit more, but again, it's biodegradable. The effects it has within our
And
industry.
no trees were harmed, and no, you know, in the making of your business card.
Right. And we talked about a lot, especially with farmers. We have a lot of farmers on the show. So, you know, we talk about soil regeneration. We talk about, you know, different projects that everybody's working on, whether it's hempcrete, wood, papers, plastics. You know what I mean? Now they're seeing that it can be a clear glass-like material because it's a cellulose base, right? A lot of these clear plastics are the same base as
Also
hemp
food.
is.
Food is really
Yeah,
important. Here in Alaska, we only have 4% of our own 4% of our own food supply that we make here in Alaska. 4% of our food supply here in Alaska is made here in Alaska, and that's a problem. And so hemp is food, you know, and it's an amazing food, and it's super tasty. On my YouTube channel, I have cooking with hemp videos, you know, that I do, and so yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, we had Shadi Ramey on last week from Hemp Can Change the World, who wrote her hemp book, right? Which is also hemp made, right? So that's amazing because it's we don't talk about that a lot. We get doctors and we get, you know, various people that come on and talk about the impact that raw cannabis can have, not just, you know, something that you decarbed in your oven and threw in a brownie. No, you can, you know, really do any sort of dish that's infused, whether you're making butters or oils. I mean, those are kind of standardized things you can use. A lot of people are using distillates. A lot of people, you know, can use raw cannabis, and you can eat the leaves. You know what I mean? Like there's a viable nutrient for that. I can't wait to see the day where a store will bring that into a store, where you can actually go to a store and find a hemp heart, a leaf, right, where, you know, it has valuable nutrients and things just as much as, and more so than any sort of lettuce you're going to eat, right? And it actually becomes a viable commodity in a store, because if we're going to support these industries, you know, to me, we need to find a way for all that plant to get exported out and being used along all the grounds, right?
On this real quick, Joe. I just want to clarify what that $200 grant was for. That did not go to other countries at all. It's actually the exact opposite. That went to the National Industrial Hemp Council. It was awarded by the USDA under their market access program. It was given to a hemp industry, North American, Canadian and American hemp industry, to develop, oversee markets for US and hemp and Canadian hemp-based products. So what that money did was so they want to open up the Asian markets. It's not to support Asian hemp industry.
Got it.
It's to open up market in Asia, in Europe for American products, so we can start to have markets for our products. We are so far behind the ball on the rest of the world that we need to catch up. Yeah, and the National Industrial Hemp Council is one of these, industry associations that have done an amazing job. It's actually the president of it is a third-generation crop farmer from Oregon. And that money went to a U.S. entity or a North American entity in order to facilitate the sale of hemp and basically promote U.S. hemp around the rest of the world. Because right now we've never been a player. We're the brand new soda coming up.
Right.
Pepsi.
And so the last shall be first.
Right. I just want to see us. I
clarify. That's what that 200 grand went for.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that clarification. That's helpful.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, that's what I'm here for. No worries.
No, that's what I mean. Though it's kind of ironic for me because we're focusing in an Asian market where can our hemp products can they compete in Asia? I mean, again, we're talking about a system that can
production ability ramps up. I mean, that's the problem we have with our hemp is that the rest of the world has had hemp legal for the last 80 years. They didn't go through prohibition. They didn't have. Never mind. Zip it. Point being, they've had a developed industry. And the most important component of that is an infrastructure. So they have processes. They have, an ability to process hemp fiber. They have the ability to take those raw materials and create things like panels for BMWs that are stronger than steel and lighter than carbon fiber. They, have created, they have the infrastructure and the network to be able to utilize industrial hemp with modern technology. The best we have is the processing we're using in the 1930s. Canada's starting to move forward, and we of course now are beginning, since 2018 and the Farm Bill passed, that infrastructure, those machines, that processing capability is starting to be developed and ramped up. And I think once we get to the point where it is ramped up, where we do have a fully functioning hemp industry, will we be competitive? Absolutely. There's no question in my mind that we'll be competitive. And that's honestly, CBD, we can talk about CBD all day, good, bad, whatever. It's the industrial uses of hemp. It's the replacement of plastics. It's the hemp cream. It's the fiber. They're replacing cotton. When you look at what needs to be done to make a cotton pair of blue jeans, the amount of water, the amount of, environmental destruction that comes from it. That's really CBD and cannabinoids. Absolutely important. Cannabinoid medicine. You're talking about our endocannabinoid system, the research they're doing in Israel. We're starting to understand cannabinoid profiles and how they affect different receptors in us individually. That is mind-blowing in and of itself, the whole cannabinoid medicine. But industrial uses of hemp will dwarf everything. So much is what's so destructive in our environment right now could be replaced with a natural product that doesn't require a lot of chemical processes to manufacture. So, I'm with you 100%. We're really, just excited about the future of hemp. And I think that once we get there, and we will get there, we might be slow. We might take our time getting to the ball, but when we get there, we're going to knock them out.
Well, America does that. I got faith. I have so much faith in America. Like the Lord wouldn't have put me on this mission if I didn't believe in America to be able to we're a superpower. We come from superpower blood. We got the Lord behind us. Like I'm not, I know that our people will just be leaders.
Well, no, I think I think it's still a scary industry for a lot of people to step in because of the the congressional support. It's not there. You know what I mean? It's not a federally accepted thing yet. You know what I mean? So a lot of these grants and a lot of the insurances and a lot of these things that people have easy access to, most businesses aren't there for these companies, right? Which is a segment to the MORE Act, right? We're talking about the federal government, right? Right now it looks like they have set time to vote on the MORE Act next month, correct?
Yep. It's scheduled right now to be voted on. We'll see if it gets bumped again or not. Again, it's for all intents and purposes just a showpiece. I mean, there's no chance of it. Mitch McConnell had just got reelected as Speaker, Senate Majority Leader, and he will not allow it to come to the Senate floor, even if it has bipartisan support, even if it could pass, which it might. It very well is a lot of commentators who think it actually would have enough votes in the Senate to get through. Mitch McConnell will not call it. So a lot's going to depend on the runoff race in Georgia. There are 2 seats right now. If they were to both go Democratic, that would put Chuck Schumer as Senate Majority Leader, and he would call the MORE Act to the floor. So that's one. I mean, and it's very unlikely that that's going to happen. What most likely is going to happen is that Mitch McConnell, it'll be a 50-49 split, and MORE Act will not ever see light of the day in the Senate, which is a shame because it's a great bill. It really, really is. It includes expungement, it includes descheduling, it includes, just a lot. It's a very comprehensive bill as compared to, say, the States Act. And it would really move the industry leaps and bounds forward. From Vegas odds, 200-1. However, the Safe Banking Act, that on the other hand, I would say even in a Republican-held Senate, 4-1 odds of the Safe Banking Act passing. Which also would do a lot of good for both the hemp and adult use industries and medical industries. But, the MORE Act is really, it'll be incredible to see. But it's just, it doesn't matter. I mean, it could pass unanimously through the House, and Mitch McConnell will not call it to the floor. So,
let's talk a little bit about politics now that we have a new, potentially a new president, right? And a new administration.
There's no potentially about it.
Now,
believe me, lawyer, I study the cases and the challenges. They're frivolous. I can't even believe the lawyers that are bringing these legal challenges haven't been disbarred, frankly. I've read the opinions, I've read the briefs. It's ludicrous. I can imagine some of the judges in this state would do if I came in front of them with those same arguments. I would get laughed out of the courtroom or I'd be sanctioned. But, regardless, not time to talk politics, I don't really think. So, I mean, we can talk about the particular political influence on cannabis policy, what's going to be better for the industry.
I mean, with Mitch McConnell, with the talk about Mitch McConnell, right? We know anything with the marijuana ended, THC ended bill is just not going to get passed, right? So does it really matter who's acting president at this point in time, right? It's really the way the Senate.
Because that's just the legislative branch with descheduling. But let's talk about hemp. Let's talk about a new USDA head. Let's talk about a new DEA head. With the new administration, what the administration can do is reset all executive branch administrative heads, which means that on January 20th, we're going to have a new FDA head. We're going to have a new DEA head. We're going to have a new USDA head. And we're going to have a mindset of further away from prohibition than we've been, like the 0.3% process rule for hemp extracts. That DEA opinion was insane. And it was in direct contradiction to the 2018 Farm Bill, which clearly in black and white lettering stated anything extracted, any extract, concentrate, isomer, salt, blah, 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 an enumerated list of 15 things extracted from cannabis sativa, which contains less than 0.3% delta-9, is legal, is an agricultural commodity. There's no confusing legalese or political, no, very straightforward. Anything extracted, source rule. If you have hemp and you extract it from that hemp, it is legal. The DEA turns around and says, if in the process of concentrating that extract, you're concentrating seeds, 0.3% delta-9, you're in possession of a controlled substance. No, that's not what the bill says. That's not what the law says. But that's what the DEA says. This whole concept of 0.3% total THC coming out of the USDA and these DEA samplers, and that your crops need to go to a DEA certified laboratory. These are provisions of the interim final rule. They're simply unworkable. And that's why they kicked it down the road another year, because they knew it couldn't be implemented. You look at the states who adopted the USDA rule, Jersey, Maine, the states that produces no hemp, Vermont, Oregon, Kentucky, Colorado, the big hemp states on the interim final rule, because they know you can't risk. Who's going to risk a crop growing acres and acres, putting in thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a crop where if you're at any point test above 0.3, even your entire crop needs to be burned to the ground?
Can I respond to that?
The natural fluctuations, sure, of course.
Okay, so here in Alaska, we legalized hemp in February of 2018 is when we legalized hemp. February 19th of 2018 was our vote. And it literally took them until, so in July of 2019, our governor tried to defund the industry, and I went to bat, and I was like, I don't think so. So I fought really hard. I lobbied my way through it, and I got him to refund the industry and go and keep going. And so it took us actually until April 4th of 2020, this year, before we even got the first set of regulations, right? The speed of government is so stupidly snail-like, it's disgusting. And so we got the first set of regulations in April 4th of 2020. And I call up all of our farmers in the state. And I was like, okay, well, would you guys grow hemp? Because we need to do this, because my mission requires that you grow hemp and then we process it and make all these things, right? And they're like, oh, I love your idea, but who's going to process it? I was like, oh, we need infrastructure. That's right. Okay, so if you build it, they will come. Okay, I got that. So I got to work on the infrastructure. Sounds good. So then as I'm going through, though, as I was offering public comment for the first set of regulations, and I saw that the crop, the way we have it is, if you can get up to 1% of THC before you are, you got to destroy that thing. And so one of the things that I really want to see changed is that instead, if you're at the 1% or even the 0.3 or seriously trying to put rules on God and the way he creates nature, how silly do we think we are? But anyway, so you want to have arbitrary limits like that, okay, fine. But if you get over that and you have hot hemp, you need to be able to process that into biofuel or plastics or something else that is non-consumable. But don't you dare make a farmer burn his entire crop because you have some arbitrary concept about what 1% or something amount of THC.
1.3.
Yeah,
You're exactly right, Sarah. You're exactly right. And I think that's one of the main reasons the interim final rule, the IFR, was kicked down the road a year. And I really fully anticipate that a new USDA head, who's not Sonny Perdue, who is a wonderful billionaire from a billionaire's family and very little agricultural experience, replaced with somebody who understands the crops, most likely with a degree, will be able to identify this. And I fully expect a completely and totally revamped interim final rule coming from the USDA on hemp. And then the Farm Bill comes up in 2022 again. So what we're hoping, our ideal situation is that we get a new interim final rule, which would then apply through 2022, at which point the new Farm Bill will enumerate, a rational, reasonable regulatory system on the hemp industry and allow it to accelerate. So that's actually a really positive thing. We're also anticipating a new head of the DEA who will not try to claim that a legal product in the midst of manufacturing constitutes a controlled substance. We could just spend all day talking about just how ridiculous that is. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Like you said,
those aspects I think are gonna, there are some positive things that I do believe we're going to be seeing in 2021. What I don't believe we're going to be seeing is federal legalization or federal even descheduling, which honestly,
at this point,
it's a state. This is grassroots, baby. This is South Dakota going from being one of the most restrictive of small amounts could equal a felony in South Dakota. They gonna screw incremental. We're going full Monty and adult use at the same time.
Yep.
That's incredible. And then of course Jersey, which is going to set off the entire East Coast. As soon as you heard the cheers in Jersey dying down, the next thing you heard were the pens of the legislators in Albany going, "Oh, we got to get this done." You're going to see New York, Pennsylvania, exact same way. Connecticut
fast tracking too, right now. So we see fast tracking. They get laws, they get legislation. Everything's going right in as fast as it can.
Jersey was smart. They were well positioned. They saw this coming. Phil Murphy was, in terms of this, really saw it. They expanded their medical program. They expanded their cultivation. They expanded their dispensaries. They started laying the groundwork. They started writing the regulations. They are well along in the process for transitioning from medical to adult use. Light years ahead of, say, I don't know, New York and Vermont, which are really, we have to.
In that mix, right? They're looking. Now the Connecticut seems to be coming up in the mix, right?
Oh, Connecticut, immediately. It's inevitable, no question about it. Pennsylvania, New York. It's simply now. Everybody was waiting for the first one to go. I don't want to be a you go. I'm not going to go. But now that one has the amount of tax revenue that is going to be generated, New York City consumes more cannabis than anywhere in the world. It's also one of the highest cost of livings of anywhere in the country. So you have more disposable income than anywhere else. You've also got 30 million people jammed into a 150 square mile little radius in the tri-state metropolitan area between Connecticut, New York City, and New Jersey. That's where I grew up. So, the amount of money that's going to be pouring in, and legislators in Albany, the capital of New York, are going to watch that money flow from New York City into Trenton, the capital of New Jersey, for about 2 seconds before there are some serious, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a month
Yeah, they were dragging New York's been dragging their feet for years. It seems like
With the COVID, they have, of course, because again, no, they didn't want to be first. Everyone's, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Nobody felt that pressure until somebody went, and it was easier to maintain the status quo. Massachusetts went and it put a little bit of pressure on them, but New York's like, Boston, Vermont, nobody even noticed, but New Jersey go. Now that's a serious issue. That's a serious issue because at the time of COVID, when there's budget shortages in every state, to watch hundreds of millions of dollars in basically free money coming from these potheads go to Jersey, that ain't gonna happen. It's great. Same thing in Pennsylvania. So we're gonna see that they're gonna be fast tracked. You also have governors in both Pennsylvania and New York that support this. And so I think that New Jersey, I'm very convinced that the House, that New Jersey passing, will be the catalyst to get it beyond the prohibitionist arguments, the petty squabbling over distribution of funds, and the ridiculous prohibition arguments. Oh my God, the world's gonna 8-year-olds gonna run this.
Does Jersey bring the best template right now for legalization to the table? Is it one of the ones that most of these states should be really looking at right now?
I think that every state that's legalized has brought some good and some bad. And I think that, it can be a challenge to identify what is what, but I think there's something to be learned from every legalization state. I think that every state that comes after needs to look at all the others, see what's worked, see what hasn't worked, make sure they look nothing like California, and then move forward. So I think it's just another piece of the puzzle which allows, say, oh, you know what, before we legalize adult use, maybe we start ramping up the infrastructure for adult use, meaning maybe we extend our cultivation. Maybe we authorize more qualifying conditions for our medical program. Maybe we have more medical program dispensaries available. In New York, they have 10 licenses. Each license can hold 4 stores. So there's 40 dispensaries in the whole state, half of which are upstate, half of which are Long Island and New York metropolitan area. Can you imagine 20 dispensaries with the amount of people going into adult use right now? I mean, it's like you can't even comprehend that number.
So I have a question. So in New Jersey, did the bill that passed, did it have a spot for taxation? Have they already?
Now I'm not an expert, and I have not read the full ballot initiative. Okay. It's my understanding that New Jersey is taxing that at their normal sales tax rate of 6.5%. From what I understand, it's to be the lowest taxed cannabis.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So here in Alaska, we had ours that was allowing it to be taxed, but here's our tax. Okay, our tax in Alaska is at $50 an ounce, flat tax. Okay, stupid tax, horrible tax, worst way ever to tax a product that's based on supply and demand. Okay, so it's at the cultivator level, it's taxed at $50 an ounce. Then what they did was they went in and they put well, we're going to do 15% on trim and 10% on buds that are not quite like trim, but kind of like trim. And they've created this super strange tax bucket. And then what it does is that tax money goes into the general fund because Alaska has a part of her constitution. So part of why this whole mission for me is part political, part social, part industrial, is that Alaska has a portion of her constitution that's Article 9, Section 7, that says you cannot dedicate tax revenue to any one thing. And that's what's wrong with the state of Alaska, is that all of our tax revenue goes to one big pool and the politicians get to decide what their priorities are. So it doesn't, so in order for my mission to work, we're going to have to tax the hemp industry at the cultivation level at a percentage that's fair, but that money has to go into a healthcare fund. And so we have to change the constitution of the state of Alaska to allow Alaskans to have much more control over where their tax revenue goes. And so I mean, I'm a big advocate for things like an online checkbook, for total and complete government transparency, where every single purchase is out there for the people to scrutinize and be aware of. And so, taxation, but it's got to be fair. And some places are 20% or, sorry, some are 6, it's crazy how different the tax rates are.
Yeah, the other thing is, you see, Vermont's works because we're going to have a 20% flat tax that's going to be collected at retail, which is great because we have a state of 600,000 people with a pre-COVID tourist annual tourist visits of 14 million. our industry will be selling to tourists. Vermonters aren't going to hit dispensaries here. Anybody who smokes cannabis in Vermont either grows themselves because we have a legal home grow, or they know somebody who grows. I mean, sure, I might pop in to grab a pre-roll here or there on the way to do something, but for the most part, I mean, overwhelming majority of the revenue from our industry will be tourists, will be the, frat boys from Connecticut coming up and hitting Stowe for the weekend, or going mountain biking, going leaf peeping, the Canadians coming over the border who are used to legal cannabis but can't cross the border with it. So great, put a 20% tax on. These guys spending $400 a night for their room in Stowe aren't gonna balk about $70 ace of the Vermont dank, because it's gonna be incredible quality. Our craft, so that's, I think that there need, depending on where you are, depending on the the market, who is going to be using those dispensaries. I think obviously it's critical that medical patients never pay a cent in tax. But if it's going to be if you have a state where you have a majority of your revenue coming from tourism, hell, I love the fact that Vermont's going to be getting 20% of every cannabis sale to every out-of-stater who's going to be come buying our incredible Vermont weed. Like that works for us. I think a 20% tax in a state that does not have that is going to be more internal, would just do nothing but perpetuate the black market.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, in Alaska, you have you're allowed to actually have cannabis restaurants and bars, correct? Like you actually
we have on-site
consumption.
We have on-site consumption. It's
I
awesome.
love
It's
that.
awesome. But honestly, we legalized November 4th, 2014. Our first retail stores did not open until October of 2016, and then and we have a cultivator, we have a testing manufacturer, and a retail license set. And so we had that. It took us, I think, until 2018 before we saw on-site consumption come to a reality. So, I mean, because these people, I mean, God bless them, but sitting in those rooms and being kind of the visionary and seeing the cannabis cafes and seeing these mindsets, and then having the people who are in power be like addicted to alcohol, and all they can think of is alcohol, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, if these people smoke weed, they're going to just destroy the world like alcohol. That it doesn't work like that. Okay, like it doesn't apply like that. And so getting them to think differently about this plant, but then when you present the science and you're like, hey, endocannabinoid system, you got one too, it just changes things greatly. But it's been a battle for sure to like fight against the mindset. But yeah, we've got on-site consumption. It's got very small, like 10 milligrams, kind of limits of what you can consume or be allowed to consume. You have to have ventilation. It has its own body of regulations, but we do.
Yep. No, it's a cheers to you guys. It was one of the first, right? California first did it. Then you guys, I believe, is the way it kind of fell in line. Yeah. It's amazing to see that, because I mean, when we talk about especially the tourism, right, travel industry, like obviously Alaska relies heavily on tourism. Vermont relies heavily on tourism in any of these northeastern states, right, especially during the winter seasons and ski seasons. It's really unique to see how each state approaches their legal sales industry, I guess you could say, especially when it comes to tourism. Like, it would be great here to, again, have a consumption site near a resort, and these guys can come and enjoy themselves, and make it more of an experience, right? Because that's what you really ultimately want when you come to a vacation, is the experience, right? You want to come up and
we were having a huge problem with our cruise ship industry, right? So Seward and Anchorage and all of that, they would come in on the cruise ships, and of course they can't bring it back on the boat with them, so they would have to, they can't, but they would, but they couldn't, and they would come in and they would be like, well, where do we go? There's no public consumption, so you couldn't go to a park and smoke this joint. You couldn't, do any, or it was $100 fee, So there was these like a big uproar when the tourism season came, and we're like, well, where are these people going to consume? They need to consume someplace. And so it kind of just fed into itself as the natural. But then also there was a ton of advocacy of people who were medical patients, and just the idea that, look, it's okay to consume socially. Like you can sit there and have your drinks with your buddy at the bar.
Right,
Yeah, we don't want to destroy our liver with, alcohol, and yet we still want to consume socially with our friends, and so it became like a battle of alcohol versus cannabis, and yet it was totally
is cannabis's toughest opponent on that, is it literally the tobacco industry, or is it the alcohol industry? Because I mean, we've kind of done that with tobacco now, right? We've kind of just like I said, get it out of everywhere. So is it?
I would say alcohol more than tobacco.
Because now we're trying to bring in something that has a smoking product to it with smoke, and trying to bring it back into this was one of my thoughts for a while. It's like, is it really the alcohol industry? Because I mean, I don't see anybody that wouldn't want to have a weed bar, right? Like anybody that has an alcohol bar would never say no to weed bars, right? I mean, obviously it's going to have an impact on their business. Cannabis is going to have an impact on alcohol either way you look at it. So, if and like you said, like I don't want to see these places cross ever, right? Like go to your own place and consume happily, be safe, have things available for you to enjoy your consumption. To again, if you have an issue with your consumption, there's people there, and like what we see, like in many of these places, they hold certain nights where there's like bingo and they do events and people come and it's fun, right? It gets people out of their house, like you said. Unfortunately, COVID kind of affects it a lot right now, but there's been places in Mass. I'm sure there's places up in Alaska now that do the same thing, where it's kind of like more like a club, where it's just kind of like, let's go hang out, and it's like the bar, right? But like we offer different things. You don't drink here. There's a bong, there's a dab rig, whatever you need. There's trays. All here, right. But then the more and more people you see there, more like you said, it's not like it's young punks going there just to get high, right? It's patients, it's professionals, it's people that worked in their office all day long, right? It's an older crowd, right? And most of these places are 21 and older anyway, so you're going to have an older crowd there anyways, right? So business professionals, people that, again, like you said, like just want to go have a place to blow off instead of at their home with their families in front of their kids or whatnot, if they have them or not. Which brings up a whole other conversation with the children and what they should know or not know, right? But to rewind just a little bit here real quick, we were talking about a lot with the government, right? And we're talking about, what we expect coming up. Now, one of the quick things I wanted to just talk to Tim about really quick was, I'm seeing a lot of discussion around cannabis and the spending bills right now. Obviously, there's discussion with spending bills in Congress right now. Explain to me what a spending bill is, and is this important to our industry right now, or is this something that it's just, again, we're going to run into a roadblock?
It could be. So a spending bill are mandatory legislation that needs to be passed every year to keep the government running. Budget allocations for payroll for the military, or to keep the lights on in the White House. Essential government functions. These are bills that must pass. When they don't, you get what when you hear about a shutdown is when they can't, is when there's, ridiculous opposition on a funding bill, and basically civil servants don't get paid. You're for the federal government, everything is shut down. So these spending bills are considered must pass legislation. So what happens is both parties utilize these as vehicles to get their agendas put across. So if you sneak something into a spending bill or manage to get something into a spending bill, that bill has to be passed. And it then becomes law, or at least for a year. Now, this is what has protected our medical industry for the last 10 years or so, which was originally the Rohrabacher-Blumhauer Amendment. It's changed names a couple times as different politicians have gone in and out. But what that basically was a piece of federal legislation that was tacked onto the spending bill every year, the funding bill for the government, which said that the Department of Justice will not be allocated 1 cent, cannot use a penny to pursue investigations or criminal charges against medical dispensaries in state legal states. Which was nice. It gave federal protection for the medical program. The problem with these is that they have to be renewed every year, and they have to be re-included and renewed every year. So it doesn't have the same power as, say, statutory law, which does not need to be renewed. That would actually become law. So the spending bills, riders, they're called, are used for temporary kind of a couple purposes to see how things work on a temporary basis without passing it into law, as compromise for other bills. All right, you go with this, we'll allow that to go into there. It's just another piece of Washington negotiation bullshit, whatever you want to call it. But it is, it's a method to temporarily pass something. So yes, they're talking about spending bills now, about maybe tacking on, COVID recovery to one, for example. That would be another one where we don't need a full law for COVID recovery. It's a one-shot thing. So you put that into a spending bill, it gets passed, it gets allocated, and then you don't have to worry about where it goes. So one-time things. They're also talking about a temporary, allowing legal marijuana. They talk about all sorts of things being tacked onto these bills, but at the end of the day, again, it's a temporary measure. Yeah, better than nothing, but certainly not, the federal policy change that we want to see.
Right. Well, we see another great sign in Virginia, right? We've talked about Virginia a few times, and it looks like they just passed a law that says police cannot search you for smelling like cannabis, which is a huge victory for cannabis people. We talk about this a lot, Tim, and where it's legal in the states, and not every state that has legal cannabis has laws like this, correct?
Well, that's not a law. So what that is, the judicial determination. It's a judicial reading of the law. And it comes down to probable cause, a concept called probable cause. For the police to search you, for the police to be able to violate your Fourth Amendment right, to get a search warrant, search your home, your car, your person, to go through your pockets, theoretically, the rule is they need to establish probable cause of a crime. It is more likely than not that a crime has been committed. And that's the standard in all 50 states. It doesn't change. That's US legal policy. And what we're seeing is these, previously, before the great green revolution here, the smell of marijuana was sufficient. If a cop smelt marijuana, there was a crime because marijuana was illegal. And that means if they smelt it on you, they could search you. That means if they smelt it in your car, they could seize your car. That means if they technically smelt it coming out of your house, they could get a search warrant for your house. All based on nothing but the smell, because it's an illegal substance. The smell of it is probable cause that a crime is being committed. Can't be convicted on that. That's just the beginning that allows them to get that warrant to continue their investigation, but it does let them go right through your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. What we're seeing now is with legalized cannabis, that entire equation has changed. So now when you have the smell of marijuana, it is no longer probable cause of a crime because there are a multitude of legal reasons you could smell that marijuana. This person could be a medical marijuana patient under state law. You could be living in a jurisdiction where adult use is allowed. With all of these, 38 state, 15 adult use, 38 medical, another 6 or 7 CBD, we're at a point where there is more Americans living in legal jurisdictions than not in legal jurisdictions. And if you are in a state where there is any sort of legalization, what us lawyer defense attorneys, I've been a lifelong defense attorney since I graduated law school, that is not probable cause of a crime. Very similar to a case we have here in Vermont right now with the visual identification of a cannabis plant, where the cops saw a plant and got a search warrant based only on seeing that plant without taking any steps to determine whether or not it was legal hemp, whether that was a hemp cultivator. And we're challenging that and saying that was seeing it's insufficient. Virginia, same exact thing with the smell, because there are a lot of legal answers for what that could be, as opposed to simply absolutely blanket illegality. So that means the cops just smelling now can't. And once that judicial opinion has been made, that's called precedent, which means now all cops have to follow that. So from that decision, now cops cannot search you based solely on the smell of marijuana. They need to get more factual basis to be able to justify that violation of your constitutional rights. That's incredible. We want to win every single one of these cases we can. We want to keep the government, keep the law enforcement out of our personal lives. Focus on the people who are hurting people. Focus on the real crime. Focus on, the murderers and the rapists. That is violent crime. That's where attention needs to be. Not somebody smoking a joint. Not somebody with an eighth in their car. And when you think about all the ramifications, whether it's family court, how many children have been ripped from their families by a Department of Children and Family type organization simply because they smoke pot. But it's okay to have a bottle of vodka and, beat the shit out of your kid. But God forbid you smoke a joint and play some guitar with them.
Oh my God, Timmy!
Really, it's mind-boggling to me what I've seen.
I have a personal story about that myself.
Yes, please tell it. I mean, I just read an article today on this in Florida, which is ridiculous. But no, please, Sarah, share it.
Okay. So, when cannabis became legal in Alaska, my son he definitely is on the spectrum. I've never officially got him, diagnosed as autistic, but we definitely have some behavioral issues and some things that have really, popped off. Well, so I really I knew what cannabis did for me. I knew how it made me feel better. I knew how it managed to just calm my senses and just do all right. So I was like, well, what if just like a pinprick of oil, what if I were able to like give that to my son? I mean, we're not talking like it, you know what I mean? Not like to get him high, but like just to calm him down. See, he had a speech delay. And so much so that at 3 years old, nobody could understand what he was saying. And he was so overwhelmed with trying to communicate himself, but he couldn't, because he couldn't enunciate and he couldn't speak the words and he couldn't say his alphabet and he couldn't do all that, right? So here's what I did. One night, I gave my son under his tongue a little pinprick of like some, THC infused oil. Okay. I did that. And the very next day, guess what? My son woke up speaking. My son woke up able to talk. My son woke up speaking his ABCs. Okay. And I'm really emotional about this because it was a powerful moment for me to be able to see this medicine work for my son. Well, so here's what I did. We went to his doctor for a normal checkup. And I was stupid because I opened my mouth and I said, what do you think about cannabis for kids? And my doctor said, well, I think it's no better than giving him Benadryl just to put him to sleep at night. And because I was an advocate for the plant, I kept opening my mouth. And I said, well, I've given my son a little dose under his tongue and he was able to speak the next day and he was able to, well, guess what? The very next day, the Office of Children's Services showed up at my house to talk to me about, whether or not I gave my child cannabis. And they threatened that if we didn't do a hair follicle test, if we didn't, submit to their rule, that they would take my child away. It was a terrifying moment to go through as a parent, because all I'm trying to do is help my child with a plant-based substance that I know was helping him. And that would have, but the government and the Office of Children's Services terrified me so much that they might take my child away that I stopped being able to give him this potential supplement to help his body. Okay. And it was a terrifying thing to go through. We had to go to OCS and we had to sit down and sit down with a group of people and be told, that they had enough evidence to possibly take away our child if we didn't submit to a hair follicle test. And it was a terrifying experience to go through. And so as a mom that simply just wants the best for her son and her child, like for OCS to come in and call you a bad mom because you consume, cannabis, but yet they go home and drink the fifth of vodka. It's a hypocritical system and it's wrong. And so that's my personal, I'm just a big advocate for, really getting lots of awareness that children have endocannabinoid systems too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, animals, children, especially when you talk about like mothers breastfeeding their kids. I mean, there poses an interesting conversation, especially if you believe in understanding people's endocannabinoid systems, right? And that transfer and even consuming cannabis, right? And then also how long it stays in your system. So it's like, we're starting to see a lot of people stop testing for cannabis, which is great. So a lot of these people are not having these workplace issues. I mean, another amazing story. It just poses what's going on in this country with cannabis, and a lot of people think because they're safe in their legal state that things aren't going to happen like this, right? Like Tim said, I mean, he brings up multiple examples. You bring up a great example.
It was legal. It was legal within our state. It was legal, but there was still, had to walk through that.
And then for you to do that, not only for you, but your child, right? Like we forget that there's a child that has to go through this experience, right? A child that has to go through
what I had to do? I had to build my child up to say, hey, we're going to go to this place and they're going to take a piece of hair to test for your superhero status. Mm-hmm. Right? Because how do you tell your kid, you're just trying to help them with something, health anyway. That was how I had to walk through, and had to try to work through that. And so, yeah, I'm just but here in ROCS in Alaska is not, they're extremely, I gotta watch myself, right? Because somebody could be watching and all of a sudden they shut my door because they're revengeful. But we have an OCS that's willing to take children from their parents and then send them to the lower 48, right? Like, right. There's not like, hey, let's get the parent fixed. Let's help the parent get some help. Let's, go through that and then reintegrate the family. No, we're just going to take them, separate them from their siblings and send them to the lower 48. And that's just a messed up policy. It's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's totally wrong. So I'm big passionate about fixing those kinds of things for just,
I mean, hopefully a lot of these marijuana policies that we see within law enforcement and different branches of offices within state levels of whatever, human services, childcare, medical, all this stuff, goes away and changes within the laws. But and it's sad that they're going to refer to laws that are pre-cannabis, like you said. I read a really sad article today, and it's on 420 Intel. It's about a combat veteran who tested positive, who was literally, he was a high school dean, right? So he was breaking up a fight. Apparently, I'm trying to read the article real quick. In 2019, and he sustained some injuries while breaking up a fight, and he was found to have cannabis in the system, right? So he basically got taken off the board, right? The board voted him out literally 5-0 because they're worried about this professional being able to do his job from there on forth. And it's like, you have to ask yourself your question. Like, obviously, if he's tested on it, he was doing his job very well prior to that point, right? He was the dean. And for him, he was given the opportunity for suspension if he promised to stop taking his medical cannabis. Now, here's somebody who has a medical cannabis card in Florida, right, where we understand that Florida is a legal medical cannabis holding state, right? So no, it wasn't like he was breaking any laws. The article is on 420 Intel. If anyone wants to check it out real quick. And it's a great article because now, he's talking about the opioid versus cannabis thing. So if he was to go take his opioids, he'd probably still have his job today, right?
And honestly, the veterans that I know that use cannabis instead of opioids have just so much more ability to function for their, cannabis is the best medicine for PTSD. There's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. My husband, we're separated, but my husband is a veteran, and he's who actually introduced me to the plant. And there's nothing like it for PTSD. Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, and here's a veteran here on Veterans Day, right? That has this report come out. Even in Canada, it's Remembrance Day. So shout out to all our veterans who serve, so we can sit here and be able to enjoy our rights to discuss politics, right? We appreciate you guys. And I can, like, you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head. Like, I don't know of many veterans or servicemen that can tell us that they didn't get through any of this without cannabis involved in their life at some point, right? And also, like, I talked to a lot of these guys about how it was treated when they were in the service. Some guys tell me it was open and used, and other guys tell me how strictly enforced it was. So really, it's depending on where you landed and who you're with, really, I would have to imagine. But for veterans to come home and not be able to have access to it through the VA or have federal funding behind it, it just kills me. One of the best things I think we've seen right now, and what I can't really wait to see, and if this can at least go anywhere, was what New Jersey did with forcing insurance companies to insure medical cannabis patients. So if this works and this goes through and everything comes out and that happens, right, like, that has to open the door up for all these other legal states, right? And then if that opens up the door for legal states, if we want to talk about saving dispensaries and generating revenue and really making that medical card worth something instead of our patients getting forced to a black market, wouldn't this be one of the biggest best answers we could give them? Is it's covered.
Yeah. Well, so my healthcare for all system is actually all medicine is covered. Like, so the goal here right now, you know how our current healthcare system is, right? You go in, you've got a headache, and you present to the doctor that you've got a headache, and he says, okay, well, here's a pill, come back and see me in 30 days. right? And you come back, let's say the pill doesn't work or it makes things worse or whatever. And you come back in 30 days and he's like, okay, well, let's do an MRI of your head, right? Let's do that. Let's see if your head's the problem, right? So they start playing pin the tail on the donkey with your health. And they spend a lot of money in playing and a lot of your time, all the while your life is falling apart because you can't fix the problem that's going on in your head. You can't, you're expected to live with it. You can't see your doctor on a regular basis. You're whatever, right? So it does the MRI, nothing is found, right? Okay, well now let's do, who knows, right? So instead, what if you walked into your doctor's office and they said, okay, let's get a full head to toe scan of your entire body the very first time you come in, okay? And let's get all your blood tests and all your saliva tests and all your urine tests and everything up front. So we have a good idea of your whole picture before you even sit down with the doctor. So then we can say, guess what? The reason why you have a headache is because you have a tumor on your kidney. Oh, that's why. Okay, cool. Thank you. So we've got to worry about spiritual medicine. Okay, we got to start talking about energy and vibration and connect. You guys can feel me. I can feel you. We're all connected as a human species. We got to start talking about that. But all medicine, okay, has to be covered and take it like. Doctors need to be able to practice medicine based on what's good for the patient, not based on what insurance companies will pay for. And that's what we have right now, is all medicine is practiced based on how insurance companies will pay for that thing or not pay for that thing. And doctors have got to be able to have the freedom to say, my patient needs this, and therefore that patient can go out and have that thing and get that thing, whether it be a surgery or whether it be a medicine. It needs to be taken care of. And so the healthcare fund mindset is that we're going to pay for the operating expenses of these facilities. And we're going to pay for these medicines and these kinds of things that people need in order to move them forward. And so cannabis absolutely has to be covered because we just cannot deny it. Like we can't stick our heads in the sand and go, well, if we make it illegal, that's going to make everything better. No, it's not. Wake up, guys. Come on. So like there's a whole bunch of people not awakened yet, not woke yet. And then there's the rest that have come. So it's one of the most amazing things has been over the past 6 years, watching Alaska legalize and then watching the rest of the state legalize, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's people that they're like, you know what would be so cool? Be like a cannabis bar. And they post that out. And I'm like, oh yeah, like we have those up here. So like we've already had kind of this collective consciousness in advance, and watching that kind of pan out in other states has been so awesome. It's so awesome. But it really shows the powerful movement of the awakening that is coming, that we are a body with us, or rather we're a spirit with a body. And so we together and collectively, we just got to unite for, a better future. Hey, that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. And cannabis really, I've never seen somebody who smokes a lot of weed and like gets all crazy and gets all angry and yet, however, it also, I think the best quote was from, who said it? I don't know. I just posted it recently, that cannabis exposes you to yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? It shows you who you are. It breaks down your walls. So for me, I had built this whole world for myself that I thought was my reality, that I thought that's who I was. And then not quite. And so cannabis broke down all of my walls and allowed me to rebuild a whole brand new person. And so it is just so amazing to watch the country kind of do that in stages.
No, my God, we need it right now. I mean, we're still setting records for sales. Again, that's why I'm just still amazed that as far as a legal market in most of these states, we're still having a lot of these conversations, even on a federal level. Obviously we understand the Mitch McConnells and the other things, but like how can we now open this up? Because once that federal level lets go, I think we're going to see a lot of these manufacturers come to the table and be like, all right, we can produce this product cheaper here or just as effectively here in this country as we can in China now, or through now trade embargoes and whatever will happen into this next stage of the next year, right? Because that's the interesting thing, is like the trade embargoes, the shipments, like how is that going to have an effect on our industry? I've seen effects across multiple other industries, right? And are those going to change? I mean, I personally don't even know where we even stand right now. Tim would have to tell me, would probably know more than me, but with our trade embargoes, does it hinder our hemp production? Does it hinder any of these other issues that we're seeing in our states that we can't get, right? Like you said, we don't make a lot of these products here because it's cheaper and easier and legal to go purchase it from China, right? Because we can't make it here. These guys do not have the backing. We just don't have the infrastructure. There's nothing there.
So what you bring up is what is required is a change of mindset.
Yes.
We've got to stop believing that it's perfectly okay to send all of our money to China or to take care of everyone else in the world when our people are broken and our children are hungry and starving on the streets. Okay. It's just, we got to turn inward, and it's not like some sort of isolationist, I don't want to help other people. It's that when you're broken, you got to fix you first before you can help others. Right. So like as a people, we've got to say, okay, it might cost me a couple dollars extra. It might, but I'm going to invest in my country. I'm going to invest in my state. I'm going to build infrastructure. I'm going to see the vision and see the future as a hemp-based economy in America. And then when the rest of the world is continuing to fall apart, we come to the rescue. That's what we'll do. This is what we always do. And so, but we have to have that mindset of people over profits. Yes, profits matter. And yes, it's important, but we have to stop serving money and start serving people. And I think with that change of mindset, that we really can care about growing a successful hemp industry in America that can compete with the rest of the world. It's not, I got nothing against Chinese people. I have nothing against any other person anywhere in another country. It's about the reality that if you don't focus on yourself, you can't help others. And if America doesn't focus on fixing herself, she will never be able to help other people. Because we're at that precipice, that change, where we just have got to do something different, because what we've done has created a very divided country at this point.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what we've done. And, it is really divided, whether it's red or blue, whether it's religious, whether it's gay or gay rights or non. Whether it's male or female, it seems like right now, like nobody just wants to agree on anything. And like I say to everybody, just smoke a joint, sit down and talk. We can agree, disagree, but let's at least let's have the discussion, right? Like, let's be open for a discussion, because everybody approaches things differently. And there's a lot of hate right now, so within that hate, can we all just sit down and learn something from somebody really quick? Maybe it's a different view, a different outlook. It's no different than reading the news every day, which as we know, media is kind of a skewed really, who knows what to believe now, right? I'm watching the presidential election, and different news sources are reporting very different winners and outcomes and numbers, and you're just like, through the last
it's
4
hard.
years.
So my truth is the Lord, right? I just trust in the internal me. My spirit can decide what's the truth. And right now, like, I just, because otherwise you'll get all sorts of screwed up in your mind. Be like, well, what are we doing today? Who's the president? We don't know. And so, it's really just focus on you and being the best you can be, and everything else will work itself out in the process for that. Yeah. So I have to actually skip out of here because my phone is about to die, and I'm using my phone for my internet because my Wi-Fi got turned off because I couldn't pay the bill. I gotta be honest. So I need investors, right? Yeah, for this industry.
Yes. Well, anyways, Sarah, real quick, tell everybody where they can find you and where they can invest in what you're doing, and check out what you're doing, because it's a great cause. And just the whole spiel again. But Hemp for Healthcare, thank you for coming on again, Sarah. Give us your time. What an amazing story. It's a hard story.
Blown away. Incredibly nice to meet you, Sara. Really, thank you.
I'm so blessed to have had this opportunity. Thank you so much. So the best way to get a hold of me, of course, find me new on Facebook, Hemp for Healthcare in America, and also Hemp for Healthcare in Alaska. If you're in the state of Alaska or really anywhere and you want to get started in the hemp industry, reach out. I can help you write your application. I can help you get registered. Every hemp processor, farmer, whatever you want to do in the hemp industry, let's get you going, because the more successful you are, the more successful my mission is. And so buy hemp on hempforhealthcare.com. Every time you make a purchase at hempforhealthcare.com or send a donation or whatever, you're funding my advocacy efforts for this to just make it happen for the world. And so thank you for your support. I love you and God bless you.
Thank you, Sarah, again for coming on again. Hemp for Healthcare, guys. Check it out. There's a website as well. There's products on there that you can buy. The bags, straws, socks, right? A lot of really cool, unique items. So you guys can reinvest into our country and reinvest into the hemp industry, which would be great. Hemp for Healthcare. Thank you again, Sarah, for sharing your time. And again, have a great week. Guys, next week, we're going to have another great episode. Simone is going to be coming on with us from the Minorities for Medical Marijuana, another advocacy that comes from the Leo Bridgewater family. So we can't wait to talk to her about all the things that she's doing. And now that we have 7 in 10 Americans that are supporting marijuana legalization, let's see if we can get this done. It's going to be an interesting next few months there, right, Tim?
Absolutely. Very exciting. very, very, that's the one really good thing, the one constant we have now is that, white, left, blue, red, this, that, cannabis wins. Cannabis wins everywhere. Cannabis wins in Montana. Cannabis wins in South Dakota. Cannabis wins in Mississippi. And the legislators tried to screw it up, and their voters got it right. They went in the right direction. And instead of passing up a ridiculous, absurd program that would limit it only to terminally ill patients, they chose a robust program that's going to be inclusive. Some of the most inclusive medical programs you see are in Oklahoma and Mississippi now. So this is not your typical, like everything else wants to be this big blue, red, conservative, liberal fight. No, not this. This transcends it. And this gives me hope because we need to transcend that. We cannot keep this conflict up because this conflict is not a mistake. We didn't get here accidentally. This is an intentional creation to keep people hating each other instead of where that hate should be focused, which is up, up the chain. Whether it's our politicians or the trillionaires, that's where we need to be looking, not at each other.
Well, what's interesting was the South Dakota governor saying that the voters made the wrong choice by legalizing marijuana. That was an article that came out that was interesting. But man, shout out to South Dakota.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on that. Shout out to South Dakota.
It was great. And then one other thing I just wanted to shout out to everybody. Sean Worsley, if you guys haven't seen this yet, he's a 34-year-old disabled Iraqi veteran. He has been released from prison. He's been one of the longest incarcerated, for cannabis users from a military standpoint. He served 10 months in prison, serving from a 2016 cannabis arrest. He's out, thank God. If you guys want to read more about that article, Ganjapreneur. And that's what we got for you guys this week, I guess. Tim, again, thank you for coming on. Vermont Cannabis.
Always love it, brother. Can't wait till next week.
Cheers to another great week of cannabis, guys. Again, keep the fight going. Keep your voices heard. The fight is never over until it's over. Until we see this federal descheduling is what we want to see. Not
listen, anything, any change, anything positive. Hell, let's just move it forward.
Let's do this. All right, guys. Remember, check your local laws.
We're going to be in a good place.
Yes, we can't wait. And if you're in a new legal state, make sure you know your local laws because everything can be different in your counties. They can be a little bit in a gray area. If you have any questions or comments, especially here in Vermont, make sure you give Timothy Fair a shout out. He can explain all this to you as it's new to us as well. And there's a lot of different ways to approach it and the time frames and things that have to get established and things that we need to do as far as a proper consumers and people that are going to support this industry and do it legally. So shout out to everybody. Another great year. It almost seems like Christmas at this point in the time. And go get high, guys. Enjoy yourselves. We'll see you next week. This is it in the weeds. Signing off. Thank you, Timothy.
Peace. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir.